Back into the action here, folks, on the number one ticket for Crimson Tide football news, in my own words, with yours truly, Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine. And before we jump into the final topic of conversation, got to remind you of TDAwear.com. That is TDAwear.com. Make us your one-stop shop for all of your Alabama football clothing, apparel purchasing needs. If you just so fancy the I Love Hearing Touchdown Alabama shirts, the We Want Football shirts, Let Them Play shirts, hoodies of all shapes, sizes, colors, forms, we got you covered right here. TDAwear.com. That is TDAwear.com. Do your shopping there today, showing that support for the University of Alabama, head coach Nick Saban, the student athletes, and us here at Touchdown Alabama Magazine. But we look at this Crimson Tide defense here in the SEC title game, and I'll say this. The Florida group it went up against will be the best group offensively that this Alabama defense will face in the postseason. No other team in the postseason, I don't care if it's Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, no other team in this postseason will have the depth of weapons and the production with those depth of weapons that Florida had. When you discuss Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, Justin Copeland, or Jacob Copeland, Justin Shorter, among others. Florida was throwing 5 to 6 guys deep, 5 to 6 guys at Alabama with 20-plus catches. Like, you had receiver after receiver after receiver after receiver after receiver for the Florida Gators, and a Heisman contending quarterback in Kyle Trask to boot that. And, you look at Kyle Pitts at tight end who runs routes like a wide receiver. That will be the first tight end taken off the board. First round pick in this next year's draft. You look at Kadarius Toney, a speedster at wide receiver. That guy's going to be a first round pick. Trayvon Grimes at wide receiver. He's going to be a high draft pick. Like, Florida had some weapons. Florida had some dudes there on the offensive side of the football. And even with that, and even with the dudes that Florida had and how Florida was solely prepared for Alabama in this matchup, because from the Vanderbilt game to the LSU game where it lost, the last 3 to 4 games of the regular season before playing Bama, you could just tell that Florida put its season on autopilot. It was just solely prepared for Alabama. From Vanderbilt on down to LSU, the Crimson Tide the Gators were actually preparing for the Crimson Tide. That was the reason why they came out so sharp in that matchup, throwing the football to the variety of targets that it has. But despite all of this, you're still looking at an Alabama defense that forced 5 sacks, that had 7 tackles for loss, that had 4 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. You're looking at a guy in Will Anderson who has been on a tear as of late. Will Anderson had 2 sacks in the game, and this season, as a true edge rusher, not just a pass rush specialist, but a true edge rush as a freshman, Will Anderson, 43 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 8 quarterback hurries, 1 forced fumble. He is on that same trajectory of a Tim Williams. I mean, he got his first sack against Auburn in the Iron Bowl in about the 8th game of the season, and since then, he has averaged at least 2 sacks in the last 3 to 4 games. He had 2 sacks against LSU, 2 sacks against Arkansas, and then 2 sacks against Florida in the SEC title. So Anderson has been on a tear. And then, when you discuss this, you dive into this right here. When you look at Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. First off, Clemson and Notre Dame, Clemson and Ohio State, they'll have about 2 to 3 really good receivers. Now, Ohio State, they've got Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, 38 catches. Chris Olave, 36 catches. They both have 5 touchdowns each. Aside from those two, Justin Fields doesn't really trust anybody else. So they only have 2 guys. When you look at Clemson, they've got Amari Rodgers, who's kind of a speed guy. They got E.J. Williams, and that's about it. Trevor Lawrence doesn't really throw the ball to any of those other guys, with the exception of Travis Etienne coming out of the backfield, and Alabama has gotten a lot better defending the wheel route on these running backs. And then for Notre Dame, Ian Book and the Irish, they've got some weapons out there offensively, one to two to three guys, but it's not like Florida throwing 5 to 6 guys at you with that depth and with that production with the bodies at wide receiver. So this Florida group that Alabama was in a dogfight in, and the Tide was able to roll up its sleeves and still get a victory in this matchup, Florida has prepared the Crimson Tide for the college football playoff, because Alabama is not going to see another offensive fire show like that in the CFP, where, every moment you got Kyle Pitts hitting you, boom, and then Kadarius Toney hitting you, boom, and then Trayvon Grimes hitting you, and then Jacob Copeland hitting you, and then Justin Shorter hitting you. The Tide is not going to face another offensive onslaught like that in the CFP. So it was able to have this game against Florida where it was in a dogfight, but its offense was able to stay ahead with the points it was able to put up on the scoreboard. And even with giving up 46, the defense still had some big plays. It still had some sacks. It still created some negative plays. It still forced some turnovers. It was still able to, at times, get off the field on third down. And sometimes great players are going to emerge and make great plays. You are not going to keep a great player bottled up for a long period of time. I mean, for the first half, Alabama had Kyle Pitts, 2 catches for 25 yards. He was going to get his at some point. Kadarius Toney was going to get his at some point. But the fact of the matter, that offense will be the best offense that Alabama will face throughout the postseason. Crimson Tide will be fine here going into this college football playoff. But folks, if you want the best in news, notes, information, and coverage here on your Crimson Tide, it's very simple and easy to get this. You get it by accessing the Touchdown Alabama Magazine app. You can download the app from the iPhone App Store if you're rocking Team Apple, Google Play Store if you happen to have the Android phone. For your audio listening needs, we got you covered here. iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Radio, Overcast.fm, or iHeartRadio. We got you covered. Also, fans, be sure to remember you can purchase individual copies of Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Have those sent to your door. That link will be found in the description. You can also copy that 4-finger bling necklace, 4-finger bling jewelry, courtesy of WeOwnTheFourthQuarter.com. That is WeOwnTheFourthQuarter.com. That link will be found in the description as well. But until next time, folks, husbands love your wives. Wives appreciate, value those husbands. Children, continue doing those things legitimately now to not be bored as the holiday season is in. Be sure to get you those 3 hearty meals a day, those 3 great laughs a day. Protect yourself, protect the loved ones around you. And until next time, folks, spit in my own words. Thank you for watching Touchdown Alabama Magazine's YouTube channel. To continue to get the best in Alabama football content, subscribe here and turn on your notifications to stay connected with the hottest shows covering your Crimson Tide.